guys.
Sarah's on. Is that you, Bobby?
Yeah.
Oh, thanks for joining. Feel free to jump in if you want at some point.
Okay. Where are you guys? Are you in Myrtle?
Yep, we're in Murdo.
I'm just outside of Pier.
Okay. Nice.
Well, good morning, everybody. Welcome to the Humanities Cafe. My name is Stacy Chadowsha. I am the program coordinator here at the South Dakota Humanities Council. And today we're going to talk about something that's kind of near and dear to all of us here. As many of you may have noticed in recent news cycles, DOGE, or the Department of Government Efficiency, has cut funding to the National Endowment for the Humanities, upon which we at the SDHC depend on for a significant portion of its funding. Just to kind of give you a broad picture, that funding allows us here to conduct numerous programs that benefit South Dakotans in a variety of ways. For instance, over 87,000 books provided to third grade students across South Dakota through the Young Readers One Book program. Our annual Festival of Books, which features a yearly average of 60 plus authors and 5,000 plus attendees. We had 26,000 attendees at the two recent Smithsonian Institution's Museum on Main Street exhibition tours that traveled the state. And the sponsoring venues experienced up to 170% increase in their visitors and 150% increase in student participation at their individual locations. Hundreds of thousands of dollars in grants funding for programs across the state, including suicide prevention programs, disability awareness initiatives, and funding for educational work and documentaries about South Dakota and its people. So South Dakota Humanities Council also provides a myriad of other programs, program initiatives. We have the Speakers Bureau, Book Club to Go, Veterans Programming, MMIP awareness programming, and ongoing and future development of programs in our state correctional systems, the preservation and sharing of oral histories and indigenous knowledge, and the upcoming America 250 semi-quincentennial celebration in 2026. That word always trips me up. It also includes, of course, this show, Humanities Cafe, that reaches out to South Dakotans to bring them into conversation about important issues affecting the people of our state that affect all of us. The humanities plays an important role in the lives of everyday South Dakotans like you and me. And to talk about the urgent state of the humanities in our programming today, I am extraordinarily proud to call the two ladies joining us today my colleagues here at the Humanities Council. First, we have Christina Oey, the Executive Director at the South Dakota Humanities Council, and Jennifer Widman, who some of you might recognize her because she's pretty famous. She's our Center for the Book Director for the state of South Dakota and the mastermind behind many of our literary programs here at SDHC, including the Festival of Books and the annual One Book programs. So ladies, thank you for joining us today. Please take a moment to tell us a little bit about yourselves and what you do at the South Dakota Humanities Council.
All right. Well, like Stacy said, my name is Christina Oey. I've been here since last May. It's actually a day after my 40th birthday. But it's been an exciting ride, and it's been even more exciting since last week. Yeah, I've enjoyed my time here. My background in South Dakota is in the nonprofit sector. I've worked at Feeding South Dakota. I was executive director of the Capital Area United Way in Pier. I recognize some folks on here from that. And yeah, so I'm excited to be here today and just talk to you guys about all things humanities.
And I am, as you said, Jennifer Widman. I have been the director of the Center for the Book at the South Dakota Humanities Council since 2012. So as Stacy mentioned, my big responsibilities in that area include managing the annual Festival of Books, our One Book South Dakota program, our Young Readers program, which includes both a Young Readers Festival and that large book distribution that Stacy talked about, as well as just other literary events that pop up from time to time, and other duties as assigned. And I am a lifelong South Dakotan, born and bred, and really appreciate the stories and the history and the culture of this state. So the humanities is the perfect place to share those.
I would also like to point out on the call that we have pretty much all of our staff on this call, but we also have some board members as well. So thank you all for being here.
And I do want to point out there that Jennifer and Christina and some of the board members, I assume, are joining us from the booming metropolis of Murdo, South Dakota. And so I appreciate you guys finding a way to join us. Thank you for sharing a brief look at what you do. I'm going to turn it over, the whole conversation over to you, and let you tell us all what we need to know about the SDHC the importance of the humanities to all of us and the urgent state of humanities funding in South Dakota. So take it away.
All right, well, I can kind of start from the beginning. So the South Dakota Humanities Council, we are an official agency under the National Endowment for the Humanities, which was founded by an act of Congress in 1965. So that act of Congress is pretty important as we continue this conversation. So our job at the Humanities Council originally was, and we actually have some folks on this call that were here when we got started, but our job was to take these federal dollars from the National Endowment and to share them in South Dakota and spread the humanities. So our mission right now is to celebrate literacy, promote civil conversation, and share the stories that define our state. We do that in a lot of different ways. We do, as Stacy was saying, our annual Festival of Book, which Jennifer will elaborate on in a little bit. We have our Young Readers Program, which provides over 15,000 books to every single third grader in the entire state of South Dakota. But we also have our grant making that we do. Our grant making is where we hit all of the small communities in South Dakota. And so we have funded projects from the VFW in a small town in South Dakota to bigger projects like the South Dakota Historical Society Conference. And so we have a lot of fun different programs that we do to spread the humanities through our grant making work. In fact, oh, there we go. In fact, this year we were actually the official funding sponsor of the South Dakota Spelling Bee. So the grant making, like I said, is where we really hit a lot of our smaller communities. We are in almost every single county in South Dakota. And we do a lot of really good work. And so to really start by the timeline of this happening, and I cannot believe it's only been a week. It blows me away. It feels like it's been a month. But essentially, on Monday, we got a little bit of heads up from our national organization. We're just going to call them the Federation. The Federation is the organization that communicates helps communicate between all of the councils. So there is a humanities council in every single state and territory of the United States. So there's 56 of us. So we were getting a couple little red flags here and there. And then I just double checked the timestamp of this at 11:46 on Tuesday. I believe it was Arizona, sends out an email saying, "Hey everyone, I just checked my spam and I got a notification from the National Endowment for Humanity saying all of our funding was cut." And I'm sitting here and I'm like, oh, I don't see anything in my inbox. And I'm checking what's called the EGMS. And you guys have to forgive me if I get a little technical here. But our EGMS is the official way that we receive communication of our funding. And it has to go through EGMS. So if you guys are familiar with communications from the government, it's actually written in statute that things have to be communicated a certain way. That did not happen in this case. And so I checked my spam, and sure enough, I had a notification from Michael McDonald, who serves as the chair for the National Endowment for Humanities, informing us that our funding was cut. And so then, of course, we got to work. And so because for those that don't know, 73% of our operating budget comes from the National Endowment for the Humanities. So I just want to repeat that 73% comes from the federal government. So when this was cut, you can imagine that the impact this is going to have not only on the organization, but on the entire state of South Dakota. So that's about $950,000 that we get from the federal government was just cut with no warning, no plan, nothing. We have not heard anything officially from the office. In fact, we received communication prior to the cut about some workshops that they're going to be hosting. But as of right now, we're just assuming that those are no longer happening because we found out that they, as of right now, almost every single employee, about 175 of them at the National Endowment has been put on leave. So there's no communication coming from the federal office. None of that is happening. I believe it was Monday of this week. We couldn't even log into the system to check on our grant funding. So a big impact on the organization. And we can confidently say right now that this did come from DOJ, because it did not come, like I said, the official communication method. And every other organization, a humanities organization, received notification the same way that we did. So as of right now, at this very moment, we don't know what's going to happen. I wish I could sit down and tell you that, oh, look, our funding was restored overnight, but that's not the case. We are actually in Murdo, South Dakota this week for a board meeting where we will be addressing really what do we do moving forward. And so it's been a very difficult situation to navigate, because if you guys recall when this first happened in February, when President Trump stopped all of the funding to nonprofits, that was us as well, but that was restored within 24 hours. So we had a rough 24 hours there, right? But then it happened again, and this time it seems permanent. There is no follow-up from the National Endowment office. And so it's like I said, I cannot believe it's been a week. We have quite literally traveled this week, the whole state of South Dakota, it feels. We were in Rapid earlier this week. We're in Murdo now, and then we head back to the east side of the state tomorrow. And so I'm going to pass it to Jennifer and see if I missed anything.
That seems pretty thorough. Yeah, it's as Christina said, it does feel to us like it's been much longer than a week in many ways. Some of the time, especially the first few days, things were changing hour to hour as we were learning more about exactly what had happened, not only with our funding, but what was happening with the national staff, whether there was anybody we could communicate with, all of those sorts of things. So it's a little bit gives you a little bit of whiplash. I think all of our heads are spinning to a certain extent. I would say that the fact that, many of you know, I see many current former board members on the call. Many people have been to all kinds of activities of ours, people who have received grants, people who have hosted programs in their libraries. And many of you know that it's not uncommon for the humanities, as well as the arts and libraries and museums and all sorts of other institutions, to be in some threat of losing federal funding. It has happened sometimes when presidents have put forth a budget that either zeroes us out or leaves us with a very small budget intended to close us down. That happened in the first Trump administration in 2017, I believe. But the difference then is that that was going through the usual legislative channels. He was proposing a budget, Congress was considering the budget, they were deliberating on the budget, and then they were changing, updating, amending, and passing or not passing that budget. So we've always felt really, really supported by our congressional delegation here, regardless of what party they belong to. They see the work that we do, and they see all the communities that we touch, and they believe that we do good and worthwhile work with a relatively small amount of federal funding, that we're good stewards of that. And we partner with all sorts of organizations in the state to make that funding go as far as it possibly can. The difference we're facing here is there was no DOGE in the past. We are outside the normal operating procedure. So while we have talked to our congressional representatives and they have been incredibly supportive, it's not clear whether that is going to save us this time. And Christina can maybe talk a little bit about those offices and the outreach that we've done.
Yep. I do want to just emphasize what Jennifer said. I said at the beginning too. So we were founded by an act of Congress. We are appropriated funds by Congress, and also we are funded by the continuing resolution right now, or the CR. And so everything that we do is provided by for Congress, both the support and the financial piece of that. And so when we first heard about this, we are pretty, I don't want to mince my words here when I say this, but our congressional delegation has been actually very supportive to the humanities. I was actually out in DC about a month ago, and I met with Congressman Dusty Johnson himself, and then staff from Senator Thune and Senator Round's office. Now that visit was more so, please, when this CR comes up, think of the South Dakota Humanities Council, and we shared the important work that we were doing. So when we found out about this cut, I contacted Representative Johnson's office, Senator Thune, and Senator Rounds. I have been in constant communication with Senator Rounds' office. We actually went in and met with his staff, as well as Representative Johnson. Both were surprised by what had happened. They had no idea that this was going to happen. and they also expressed immense concern. And they have said that they want to stay on top of this issue, and we have continued to provide them information. It's a unique situation in that the humanities are not a partisan issue. The humanities support every single community in South Dakota. And so that's where we are, I feel extremely lucky in that we have Senator Rounds and Representative Johnson taking these concerns very seriously. With that, I kind of wanted to open it up for questions because we just threw a ton of information at you in 15 minutes. And yeah. Oh, was someone going? Oh.
Ladies, this is Bobby. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Yes.
I think that you know, I really appreciate all the information that you've given us. I know how hard you've worked, but I think it's important to share with this audience that, you know, due to the foresight of some past board members, there is no imminent danger of us closing our doors. Correct?
Yes. This, you know, I don't want to share too much information because it hasn't been all presented to our board yet. Like I said, we're meeting today. But we are fortunate that we do have support that we can rely on for a little bit. Now, that's not going to get us forever. And so, yep. And so for right now, we don't see any immediate changes. We also don't know what's going to happen with the legality of this. And so I personally would love if I got an email saying that, you know, everything's fine. But yeah, but we still have work to do. I also want to note that, we are really fortunate in the fact that we do have an endowment. This is what an endowment, our endowment was created for. We also know that other humanities councils across the country aren't as lucky as us. Wisconsin, I believe, is shutting its doors in 3 weeks. Washington has also started furloughing their employees already. Alabama Humanities has actually stopped all of their grant making, and New Mexico is likely closing down in a month. California, of all places, has 3 months to go. So while we don't have an official timeline that I can publicly speak on just quite yet, we are very lucky that we do have an endowment. However, we still need the support of Congress and our community to really step up and support the humanities.
Hello, Christina. This is Don Simmons. How
Hello.
are you?
Good. How are you doing?
We haven't met before. I left a message a couple of weeks ago at the office because this was actually a rumor in the air. But never got a call back. So, and
now I'm on the spot.
yeah, well, I'm being candid. And it is great that we have an endowment, and I'm glad that we worked to get that established years ago. And for everybody on the call who helped make that possible, I want to thank them. But my personal reaction is you may end up getting some cuts, but you won't lose everything. You know, anything I can do, just let me know. Thank you.
I appreciate that. And I love that support. Yeah. And, you know, coming after this week, once we have a better idea of the direction that we're going, with the support of our board, I think then you'll start hearing about us more, and really just our fundraising plan for the future.
There is a question in the chat, ladies, from Joseph. He says, you mentioned, are there other ways to create new partnerships to stymie the DOGE cuts proposed by the current administration until legislation or litigation has been aired out?
Yes, so we have actually been reaching out to all of our partners here in South Dakota. I specifically want to thank the arts community because I think we kind of know which direction that their funding is going as well. And so we're planning a partnership with them. We've already supported them. They've already supported us. So thank you, Jim. And there's others that have also reached out, but they don't want to be publicly mentioned just quite yet. So both statewide and nationally.
Yeah, and I guess I would add to that, you know, Christina has an extensive background in fundraising. We've really been trying to ramp up our development to the best of our ability for a while, not just because of this particular threat, but just because that's the right and responsible thing to do. But yeah, it's when you have a 73% of your budget, when you have that $950,000 amount that's gone, that's a lot of money to make up, even with the incredibly generous donors that we have here. And we're thrilled with the way that people are stepping up to help. But again, you know, we're looking at the long term. I think we would all say maybe our best case scenario is the fact that we have this endowment that can keep us going for a while. There are actions sort of being contemplated behind the scenes by some various attorneys general from different states, by some private lawyers, might be a consortium of humanities councils joining together. If we could get an injunction or some kind of legal action while we still have the funds to carry on, then we're, as Christina said, in much better shape than some councils who don't have the reserves that we have.
There's another question in the chat for Rhonda. She says, we had just started to communicate with speakers through the Speakers Bureau program for the Del Rapids Museum. Where do we stand going forward with this? We had not applied for any grants yet.
I would say as of right now, just proceed as normal until you hear from our office. We're telling even our grantees that as of right now, we are proceeding as normal, quote, whatever normal is. But until you hear from our office, just continue on with your plan.
This is Steve Sanford. Before you got this announcement, was the National Humanities Council up to date in grant funding for you, or is there any substantial amount that they are behind?
So the way that it works is we don't just get a lump sum of money. I know Steve knows this because he's been on our board and he's a supporter. In fact, I was supposed to meet with Steve when I found out that this all happened. So we have to actually come back and ask for the funding. So we don't get it up front. And so as of right now, I believe Carolyn, about 25% of our allocated funds we've received. Yeah, so we've only received about 25% of that 950,000. So
if nothing improves, I know it's very early to speculate about this, but the book festival for this year, I mean, have you decided yet whether that's going to be dependent upon some sort of larger solution?
well, I can say this because I don't want to put Jennifer in an awkward position, but I think, I know I can confidently say we are doing the festival this year. Now, what scale that's at, I'm not quite sure just yet, but I do know that, we've actually already made commitments for the festival, financial commitments, and also just commitments to Spearfish, because that's where it's going to be this year. And we don't want to let that community down either. So I can confidently say that the festival is happening this year.
We actually, in fact, just returned one of our many items of business out in the Black Hills was to meet with a steering committee of volunteers who help us to plan the festival out there, as well as some partners from local libraries and cultural organizations and Visit Spearfish, and just some people who've been volunteering with the festival since its beginning. And we definitely are planning on moving ahead. One of the things that is a little complicated about this happening when it did is that we are about halfway through our fiscal year and the government's fiscal year. So that means we have, like we said, we've signed contracts, we've made agreements, we've spent money for deposits. The same thing is true with our Young Readers program. Those books are in publication and design right now. So we've already paid for half of that money. So it's not like things can just be dropped. But yeah, our goal always is to go forward with as many high quality programs as we can. And we are full speed ahead in the planning of the festival. It's possible that a few things may look a little different, but I think it will absolutely be as high quality as ever.
Great, thank you.
There are a couple of new questions in the chat. The first one is from Axton. She says, SDHC support of authors has been strong through the book festival and Speakers Bureau. What does the future of these programs look like, and how can the author community support SDHC?
Oh,
yeah,
I love that.
I love that. Thank you, Axton. Axton has been a speaker at our festival as well as a scholar. And I would say that the support that the author community can offer us is probably very similar to what the general humanities community can offer us. First of all, come to the festival, join us, take advantage of the programs, show that you support what's happening and that you find it valuable. Take our workshops, listen to our authors, come and get your books signed, all of the stuff that you love to do already. Second, if you have the means, please donate to support the Humanities Council and the festival and all of the other programs that we do. And third, we have some pretty detailed information on our website. If you go to sdhumanities.org, there is a page that's devoted to these federal cuts that has talking points, contact information, potential scripts, and some other facts for you to contact our Congress people. The more people they hear from, the louder I think they will advocate on our behalf. So join us, donate to us, and advocate for us. We would appreciate all of that so much.
Okay, another question. It comes from Sharon, who's also very familiar to us. Thank you, Sharon. Where do the funds in the endowment come from?
It's funny you asked that because there are some amazing people on this call that help establish that endowment. So we have a few endowments, but the one that we can tap into for this situation was actually founded by our board and our generous supporters in South Dakota. And so it wasn't any federal funds that went into that. It was just general support from our donors that recognized the long-term commitment needed to keep the South Dakota Humanities Council operating. And it was also created for situations just like this. Unfortunately, federal funding isn't always guaranteed, and the folks that established that endowment had that in mind.
I see another question as well. I don't know, Stacy, if you want to read it out or.
Oh, you're muted. Oh, you're still muted, Stacy.
Something weird's going on.
All right, I can read. I can read her question. Are there dialogue with other humanities councils to game out solutions and/or options for continuing humanities programs in South Dakota and other states? Yes. That is one of the most amazing things about having a council in every state is we're all very, very close and we are all very supportive of one another. And so right now, we actually, I kind of touched on this a little bit, but we have what's called the Federation for State Humanities Councils. And they really bring us all together to support us in advocacy and lobbying efforts, but also just to keep us all communicating with one another. And so they're, on the legal side, we are all planning to come together to whether it's individual or all together as like a class action or an emergency injunction on behalf of all the state councils. So we are all working together very closely. And if you guys saw my inbox, you know what I'm talking about. But yes, we are all trying to support each other as much as we can.
Yeah, I would say there. Oh, I was just going to add that there's a group of executive directors that meets regularly. There are also other groups meeting by Zoom, whether they're development people, whether they're communications. I had a meeting yesterday with there are 27 centers for the book that are housed in humanities councils. Others are housed perhaps in state libraries or are independent organizations. And we're all talking about, what does your budget look like? What is your plan going forward? I think we're getting helpful ideas about how to approach supporters, and also just, trying to band together, especially as Christina said, with any legal action that might happen, that will definitely be a group effort. And frankly, it's all, I think, also good for our mental health, right? I mean,
Yep.
We can commiserate and then we feel like we're all in this together.
Marty has a question too. She asked, does the South Dakota state government have any action or input in this concern?
Well, it's really interesting you asked that. Unlike most other councils, we actually do not receive support from the state, which can be a blessing and sometimes not, right? So we have not really been working with the state. I did reach out to our Attorney General office, Marty Jackley's office, and they do not plan on participating in any sort of legal action on behalf of the South Dakota Humanities Council. And so But that's not to say that you guys can't contact your state legislators, because this affects their communities as well. That little library in the small corner of Lemon, South Dakota, is going to be affected by this. And so they need to know that these are happening in their local communities. So please reach out if you guys need any assistance on that. I'm kind of a political nerd. I'm a political nerd. And so you can go to the legislative website and find out who your elected officials are. Otherwise, reach out to me. I love connecting folks on things like that.
Again, from the chat, thank you for advocating for this, because as someone who has done their degrees in the humanities and intended programming in the humanities are important for our cultural fabric. Thank you so much for that, Joseph. You are absolutely correct.
Thank you. That's the kind of encouragement we need right now. And I've been thinking a lot about that lately, about how just one person reaching out has really made a big difference, at least for me and the other folks at the Humanities Council. Even if I don't respond, it's really meant a lot. So thank you all for your support and encouragement. All right, any other questions? All right. Well, as of right now, our next steps are I wish I could speak more on the legal side of this. Did we get any reason why the humanities was a target by DOJ? No. The letter that we got, the notification was very pretty much you have lost your grant funding, period.
I think the closest thing to an explanation was a fairly generic sentence that said, your funding no longer meets the administration's financial priorities.
And I do want to touch on, the whole purpose of DOJ, right, is to try to eliminate fraud and waste. The South Dakota Humanities Council has passed every single audit that we've been put under, and we do go to we pay more actually for our audit, because not a lot of auditors can handle government grants. And so we go through an audit every year, and I want to thank Carolyn for that. She spends a lot of time to make sure that South Dakota Humanities Council is financially sound and being responsible, not only with our donor dollars, but with our federal funds. So we have passed every single audit, and which is signed off by our board as well, which will happen this week in Murdo. And so I just want to point that out, that there is no fraud and waste, and I can say that with 100% confidence. That audit is not an easy one to go through, and I've been through a few as a nonprofit executive, and this is one that it's pretty serious.
I'm just going to throw something out there to it. I mean, I work at the South Dakota Humanities Council, and I do want to point out that recently some of you joined us for our Humanities Cafe episode on the literacy crisis in South Dakota. And that's something that is something we are really pushing for to help improve and address at the Humanities Council. And Jennifer, I'm going to throw it out to you and put you on the spot and say, what kind of things are we doing here at the Humanities Council in regards to the literacy crisis?
So obviously the biggest piece of that we work with directly is the Young Readers One Book program that we talked about earlier. We have seen with the different national testing and the measures of proficiency in reading, especially that happen at the 4th grade level, that those numbers have really been declining in the past few years. Some of that was due to the pandemic and the different educational disruptions that happened due to that, but it's also bigger than that. So one of the things that we find that we're able to do with the resources that we have is to put this book into the hands of all of those 3rd graders at what is really a crucial time in their development of literacy. You will often hear elementary teachers and literacy specialists say 3rd grade is when kids stop learning to read and start reading to learn. So at that point, if they are behind, there's a lot of good research out there that shows that that affects the rest of their educational career. It increases the number of people who end up incarcerated, unemployed, or having other challenges. And so we feel like making a big impact at that moment is something that we can do. We bring in the author or illustrator, or in the case of this year, 2 authors and an illustrator of the Billy Mills book, Wings of an Eagle. And if you ever get a chance to come to one of those third grade presentations where we bring in the third graders who have gotten their copies of the book, who have talked about it in class with their friends and their teachers and their librarians, and then the author walks out on stage, they will cheer so loud for books. They will be so excited. They are meeting a celebrity, and they will go out talking about how they want to write books and they want to illustrate books, and they're going to read all the other books that this author wrote. And it's very heartwarming and exciting. Now, that alone, of course, is not going to solve issues with literacy. And so with that, a lot of what we do is partnership with other organizations that work on that. For instance, Black Hills Read has programs that start from birth up to third grade when we partner with them. So they're building the necessary habits. They're working with parents. They're delivering books to kids at younger ages. They're encouraging read alouds. The South Dakota Statewide Family Engagement Center is another big partner, and also a lot of the libraries that we work with. We can support some of their programming for kids and help them, get kids in touch with books. But I will tell you that I grew up in a family that had lots and lots of books. We went to the library all the time. I was surrounded by books in my house. My parents are both college educated, which is not necessarily the case for everyone. So when I see some of those kids who are so excited to have that book that they have never had before, some of them have never owned a book. And so we don't all have the same kind of, experience. So to see a child who hasn't owned their own book have a book and get excited and say, I get to keep this, is just really meaningful. And I think it's easy for us to forget sometimes that we don't all start on a level playing field. So we're trying to help out with that.
Christina, this is Don Simmons again. I know that, of course, you're focused on the state stuff, but the literacy things might come into play, perhaps in state government. I don't know if you've reached out to Kyle, the education chair in the Senate, Senator Schoenfish, but if you'd like to reach out with him, I'd be more than happy to do that with you.
Yeah.
Regarding literacy or other things.
Yeah,
Okay?
absolutely. Yeah, I appreciate that. Thank you. One more thing I wanted to touch on is that one of the things that, I shouldn't read social media comments, right? But I do. And that a lot of folks don't realize about the South Dakota Humanities Council especially is that we are trusted to give away federal dollars because the federal government doesn't know South Dakota like we do. They don't, and other organizations as well as the federal government doesn't have the capacity to vet these programs like the South Dakota Humanities Council does. So up until this cut happened, we were trusted to distribute those dollars. We also do a huge report annually, and as we are held accountable to those federal dollars. So we provide these reports to the national office. So we know our state. We know the small little corners of South Dakota. We know our culture, and we know the folks that really depend on these funds. And so it's our job at the Humanities Council to distribute those funds. It is 73% of our budget. We do depend on private support as well. We couldn't do what we do without the support of individuals, our businesses, our foundations, and our overall donors in the state of South Dakota. Because like I said, we know our state. And we really appreciate everyone on this call because it's making me smile knowing how many people are here, one, supporting the Humanities Council, but two, who helped get us where we are. There are so many people on this call that have helped form that endowment, that helped found the Humanities Council in South Dakota. And we truly couldn't do what we do without every single one of you guys. So thank you so much from the bottom of my heart. It has been challenging, but when I say that this support has really change the world for us, I'm not overstating it. It really is tremendous. So thank you.
Christina, Don Simmons again. Have you thought about reaching out to the Bill Felts and asking maybe if they could help you with the rent for a month or two?
I just got an email the other day, actually. They know about it. They know. So yeah, I think after this board meeting, we're going to have a pretty good plan of action, at least from the financial point of it. So. All right.
I'm going to toss out there something else too that maybe people aren't necessarily on this call aren't necessarily aware of, but a lot of the money that we get at the SDHC is for us to re-grant to other people who apply to us for grant funding. Can you speak a little bit about what some of those programs are and what those grant funds have gone to support over the years?
Yeah, I mean that's probably one of my favorite things to do here at the South Dakota Humanities Council is our grant work. You know, a lot of folks don't realize how far the humanities reach, both physically and also just the topic itself, right? So like I said earlier, I shouldn't say this, but one of the cool projects that we funded this year was we were the main funder of the South Dakota Spelling Bee. If you guys recall last year in the news, you know, they were maybe not going to have a spelling bee champion for the state of South Dakota. And, you know, I think most folks are like spelling bee, but you have to think of how passionate those they're not little. I can say that because I have kids that age, but those children and students are, when it comes to that, you have to read, you have to sit down and commit to something. And it has a huge humanity component. So that's another example. Another big one that stands out is anything really that has to do with our veterans. That's going on right now, our veterans writing workshop, but we also support a lot of different programs that help support our veterans. Some other ones that really stand out to me are just because again, I'm a history nerd, you know, we have the Ghosts of Galena presentations that happen through our grants. Gosh, I'm like, I could spew all day. What are your favorites?
Yeah.
I keep talking. I'm like,
no. We love to talk. Yeah, I would say, you know, it's so meaningful to be supporting, for instance, Lost and Found in doing their 30 Days, 30 Stories suicide prevention program, where people tell their stories of going through mental health crises in hopes of helping others. And again, that's sharing the stories of South Dakota. Definitely things like the South Dakota Historical Society's annual history conference is a really big one. I would say all of the book discussions, history presentations, and things like that that come up through our grants and as well as through our Speakers Bureau, they help us to reach the whole state. And I think a really important thing about that is that whether it's a grant that's applied to us for, that's really poorly stated, but there you go. If someone applies to us for a grant, that is a grassroots effort. So we're not a top-down organization for the most part that says, oh, you should do this program, you should tell this story. Instead, people come to us and they say, in my community, we have this really great story that we want to tell more clearly, or I want to make a documentary like about the ghost town of Galena out in the Black Hills and how it's revived, or you know, just this museum in my town needs some updates, and we are looking to come up with as much funding as we can for that. So I think we do probably a lot more than people realize. And I think the fact that it starts with the community and then comes to us is probably one of the most important parts of what we do. I would also say that all of the discussions that we have, I think there's probably not a person on this call who would disagree with me when I say that I'm concerned about the state of civil conversations and civic discourse around our country. And part of what we try to do is guide and model civil conversation about difficult issues with this very program, in fact, so that we can learn to disagree, to learn more about another person's point of view. That's the whole point of that humanities storytelling. And I think that's the only way that we can make a stronger civil society. So, yeah.
I think my favorite recent grant funded activity, for those of you who are aware of the movie Killers of the Flower Moon, it was actually a book written by David Gran, and we helped SDSU, South Dakota State University, bring David Gran to speak on campus last year, and it was phenomenal. So, I mean, the range of things we get to do is pretty cool. There is a comment from Marty in the comments. She says, the work that I have been able to take advantage of over the years from the humanities has been life-changing for me. I cannot begin to say how important this work is for our small communities. The pride that you give our communities is dynamic. This is nothing to be taken for granted. Thank you, Marty.
Thank you. Truly. And if you guys wouldn't mind, you know, the fundraiser and Christina's coming out right now, But please, any of those comments that you can share with us will also help because again, you know, to be blunt, we need to brag about ourselves at the Humanities Council, but it's one of those things where not a lot of people realize how far reaching we are, and we need to do a better job at that. And so please, if you are comfortable, please email me any quotes you have so that I can share your story as well.
I think one thing I wanted to toss out there too, with Jennifer, with what you said about the civil conversations, and those of you who have been on the Humanities Cafe episodes recently know this is something that's important to me, is having those conversations about things that are sometimes difficult to talk about. And one of the things that has come out of the administration is we don't talk about DEI, diversity, equity, inclusion, and that includes all of us, whether it affects you directly or not. You know somebody that diversity, equity, and inclusion is important to. It's important to all of us. So that's something that I think, as the program coordinator for SDHC, that's something that's near and dear to my heart, and is something that I am 100% committed to. And we couldn't do that without the support of everybody on this call and everybody who participates in humanities programming in South Dakota. So I just wanted to toss out my little thanks to everybody on that.
You know, and that's one thing that is kind of funny in that, you know, I keep saying I'm trying not to read social media comments, right? But that is part of our mission, is to promote civil conversation. And we should be able to have these difficult conversations, because how are we going to learn and grow if we don't have open and honest conversations, especially with folks who may not agree with? And to be honest, sometimes it takes people from different extremes to come together for a common purpose. And so, yeah, I also love, you know, I got to give a shout out to some of the folks that are constantly on here. Tara, you're one of them. She's on every single week, because, you know, she's at the Gregory Public Library. And that's another example. We're hitting Gregory, South Dakota, you know, and you're not too far from us right now. We're in Murdo. So
everywhere feels like far away in South Dakota, but I think, yeah, what's beautiful about this is that it does bring us all together to feel like we're neighbors with one another. And I just wanted to thank you for our Missing and Murdered Indigenous Persons series was funded through you guys, and that really brought my community together into a higher understanding of one another and the people that we live beside, and trying to open those conversations as well, and garner, you know, some more intelligence in having those conversations as well. So I think that it goes beyond just these humanities cafes, and through the grant work in the communities, the conversations that are getting started, it's been super beautiful and super powerful as well, and continues to be talked about. So we thank you from Gregory for all of the grants that we have received and continue to receive, and just getting those conversations going here in a community that I really think needs to do that and have awareness, especially cultural awareness is something big, as a platform in my library of trying to understand all cultures and people. So, and that's exactly the heart of humanities. So
I love that. I'm getting all teary-eyed. I was trying not to. I have meetings after this. But thank you. And then Joseph, I see your comment too, that what makes South Dakota great is the community dialogue and helping each other when these are challenges from different towns. Absolutely. We are South Dakotans. And that's one thing that has blown me away. I'm originally from Minnesota. I moved here about 20 years ago, and I love sharing the story about, shouldn't love it, but I lived in Pierre, and I don't know if you guys remember, but in 2016, a random small tornado came through Pierre, South Dakota, and I was like, no one on my block or within, you know, a couple blocks of my house were hit, but a tornado hit my house. And, you know, we had 3.5 trees down, car was almost ruined, the house was almost ruined. Luckily, my family was okay. But I had neighbors I'd never even met. And this is one that does get me cry. They took the day off of work to come help dig us out. You know, I had the commissioner for the school public lands come over with his chainsaw and help get out of trees so we can move our car. And South Dakota really is powerful in that we may disagree politically, but we understand the need to come together to help each other.
I kind of want to brag on something too, because I mentioned in my introduction about the Smithsonian Institution Museum on Main Street programs that we do. And I kind of want to shout out to all the people of South Dakota and for everybody who supports us, because they have actually been really curious as to they have contacted me directly and said, we want to know how it is that you have such a great rapport and interaction with your indigenous peoples in your state. And I'm so proud to say that, we have a great relationship with them because we care. We want to share those stories because a part of our motto is to share the stories that define our state. What defines our state more than our indigenous our 9 sovereign nations in this state, who are tremendously culturally important, and I'm really proud of that, and I'm proud that we get to do that in South Dakota, and that we get to do that work here. So.
Are there other questions?
Or comments, or are there any of our board members on the call that want to say anything at the moment?
I think we may have lost Bobby. Oh, no, that's Bobby with the B.
Obviously,
So actually, I was going to tell you that one of my favorite events last year was to have Trent Presler come to the Grant County Library. So to have an author of that level, he wasn't the first one, but it was made possible through the Humanities Council. And so to host Trent Presler in the Grant County Library and to a full house was incredible. And that was made possible through this organization.
This fall too, with the Young Readers One Book at the Festival of Books, hundreds and hundreds of children are going to be able to experience Billy Mills. I mean, he an Olympic champion, who from Indian country, who nobody saw that coming, that he was going to win the gold medal. He didn't even know. So I appreciate you saying that, Bobby, because it's pretty impactful when we get to expose everyday South Dakotans to important people like that.
No, and I was gonna say that, going back to Christina about South Dakota, when Delmont got hit with the tornado, I think it was 10 years ago now, you had people from all over the state. I mean, we drove over an hour and a half not an hour and a half, but from Freeman to help them. And that's what makes South Dakota unique, is the people here want to help each other. They want to have dialogue. They want to be the best neighbors we can. And that's what makes South Dakota, I think, unique from the other states in the region.
I think absolutely. And that's why we are so incredibly lucky. It's hard for me to brag because I'm from the Midwest, right? But it is one of the things that the South Dakota Humanities Council does have over other states, is the support of our community. And that's why we don't have to shut our doors in 2 weeks or a month, is that we do have that endowment. We do have supporters like everybody on this Zoom call that has really come together, held their hands together, and supported the humanities. And so absolutely.
We have a comment from Arlie in our chat here, who's also a Speakers Bureau scholar for us. He says, thanks for the opportunities to educate and inspire. Thank you to you, Arlie, for doing that educating and inspiring with us. And then Michelle has a comment. Thank you so much for tackling this difficult conversation and situation. The Billy Mills future events are amazing, especially for our children. Thank you for all that you do. Thank you to you as well, Michelle.
Thank you.
yeah, and one of the things that makes me think of, I know Michelle's up at the university here. We are obviously far from the only organization going through some challenges. Education at all level is going through some challenges. Organizations libraries, museums, organizations that provide necessary elements of life like food and heating assistance and things like that. It is affecting all of us. So I think that makes it even more important that we all work together. I think the needs are great. And I know sometimes people will feel like there's so much that has to be done. How can I possibly influence it? I think we're all just here saying, if we work together, if we work with libraries, if we work with universities, if we work with K-12 schools, we work with museums, we work with other nonprofits, we can amplify our impact and get through this.
I love
do
Marty's
see-
comment.
Okay, go ahead.
I was just say, I love Marty's comment that I'm impressed with the work that is exchanged between the Arts Council and the History Society. We love our arts and history community. I mean, we're part of that community as well, right? Because that's the humanities can cover a little bit more because we touch all those topics, but we love them so much. I mean, the amount of support. When this happened, you guys, I kid you not, like the first person I got a text from in that morning was from our arts community saying, how can we help? And, you know, just coming together to support just the arts, the humanities, the historical societies. It's just, that is one kind of thing that the good that's kind of come out of the situation is we are in this together. And I love that folks we're not competing. We are here to support essentially the culture, the history, and the future of South Dakota together. And it's one of the things getting us through this really hard time.
I see that we are honored to have on this call today our South Dakota Poet Laureate, Bruce Roseland. Bruce, I hate to put you on the spot, but do you have anything you wish to share with us today? At least just to let us hear you speak. Oh, you're muted, Bruce.
Yeah, there we
There you
go.
go.
Well, I have been to 20 of the 21 festival of books. I did not make the first one. I wanted to see if you guys had sticking power. Well, and I came to really appreciate it. I did go to college and I went to some writers' conferences, and oh my goodness, I learned so much from that. I went to the Beat Poets. I was up at UND. They had a writers' conference. They were there for like 4 days, and that was amazing. And I guess that's probably why I went to the Festival of Books, because I thought, well, am I gonna, meet other people that get excited about words, get excited about ideas? And I certainly did find them. And I think I Festival of Books is the big thing for me. You do a lot of other stuff, but I think that's that one thing that so many people from all over the state, and they see each other person to person. And that face-to-face thing is really important. And a lot of these sessions are small enough that, yeah, you could ask a national figure or ask somebody in the state questions, ask them how they write, where they get their ideas from, so on and so forth. And it's an opportunity. And I think it really influences a lot of people. When we throw a rock into a pond, we have no ideas where those waves will touch upon what shore. And that is what we do. We have to have that faith that we toss those rocks out there and they touch so many different people in so many different ways way into the future. So that's the thing. We are responsible for our own culture. We are responsible for making our own culture, promoting our own culture. No one else is going to do that. Nobody from the East Coast, West Coast, or whatever. It is South Dakotans who take care of South Dakotans. So it is a grassroots organization and built by a lot of voluntary work. And that's what you see happen at the Festival of Books, and that's what you see happen in a lot of other things. I've been involved in Poetry on the Road, which has been funded by the South Dakota Humanities. We've gone to, will go to 19 communities this year. And, it's a wonderful thing. We have a lot of people who've never read before get up and read. And that's where I got my start back in high school. I went to an Arts in the Park thing. And I read my one poem, and yeah, people liked it. So, like I say, you toss that pebble out there, you don't know. And then 40 years later, I found my way back. 30 years later, I found my way back to the culture of South Dakota. So, in a long ways around, what we're doing is a good thing. And we just got to keep walking forward. That's what it is. and things change, especially in politics. The pendulum swings. It swings this way, and the next year it swings that way. So you think nothing is a forever trend. And I do believe the good wins in the end. So yeah, that's my comments.
Thank you so much, Bruce. Any final comments from you two ladies? We're butting up against the end of the lunch hour here.
I just want to thank you guys, every single one of you, for not only hopping on this call, but just being a cheerleader for the humanities. It really does make a big difference. And in fact, I hope you don't mind. I'm going to go back, Bruce, and I'm going to take your comment and listen to it when I'm feeling a little down. So thank you so, so much. I do want to say some action items. Just continue to call your elected officials, especially your congressional leadership, Dusty Johnson, Mike Rounds, and Senator Thune. They need to hear how this is impacting their communities. And so please continue to reach out. Their contact information is on our website, but also if you need help contacting your state legislators, please reach out. I'm more than happy to help.
It's also posted in the chat a little while ago, but before several comments, but it's also in the chat. Well, on that note, it is 1 o'clock, so I do want to thank you all for joining us today. I hope to see you on Thursday, April 24th. We're going to talk about, believe it or not, the fact that South Dakota has the highest rates of medical debt in the entire country. We're going to talk about that. We're going to dig into that a little bit. So in the meantime, for the next couple of weeks, take care of yourselves. Thank you for joining us, and I hope to see you again soon. Bye-bye.
Bye.